Hello and welcome to Modelling Misadventures. Now today I'm going to be dealing with something that's been an interest of mine for many years, and that is space and space memorabilia. And I've actually got a very large collection of items relating to space, all sorts of things ranging from toys, models, figures, pictures, cards, stamps, photographs and autographs. And about 20 years ago, I made a display cabinet that I put in some of these specific items related to space. Now, the cabinet has been sitting gathering dust for a long period of time, and it's got some models inside it that haven't even been unwrapped since we moved house 10 years ago. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to get the cabinet out. I'm going to clean it up, put the models back in and hang it on the wall. And I've also got a couple of other things to show you related to space memorabilia that I've collected recently. So let's get going and see what we've got. So this is a collection of model rockets that I made ages ago, and they're wrapped up in bubble wrap and they haven't been opened for over 10 years. I'm going to get them out and see what we've got. Well, there's the rocket lineup, and they've come out pretty well. Actually, out of storage, there's a little bit of damage to be repaired. Just going to have to glue a few things back together. But on the whole, I'm pretty happy with the way that they're looking. So this first rocket is the Mercury Redstone rocket, and this was the first rocket to launch an American into space. Alan Shepard in 1961 flew a suborbital flight in this rocket and then came down on a parachute, the first American in space. This next rocket is the Mercury Atlas, a more powerful rocket than the Redstone, and this one was the first rocket to launch an American into orbit. John Glenn flew into orbit on this rocket again in 1961. Now this little rocket is the Gemini Titan, and this first flew in 1965, and it was the first rocket to fly two Americans into space, and that was Gus Grissom and John Young. And the Gemini capsule at the top is what NASA used to learn all about orbital mechanics and rendezvous in order to prepare themselves for the moon landing missions. Now this rocket, which is bigger than all of the American ones that I've just shown, is Vostok 1, and this is the Russian rocket that flew Yuri Gagarin into space, and he was the first astronaut to go into space, and he orbited the Earth in 1961. And this rocket, you can see the nose cone comes off, and there is the little Soyuz capsule, the Vostok capsule that he flew in, and then he parachuted down to Earth after his orbit. Now this is a much bigger rocket, and this is the Russian Soyuz rocket, which first flew in 1967, and it's still flying today, and it still has exactly the same construction with these four big strap-on boosters at the bottom and then a second stage here at the top. And inside here you can see the Soyuz capsule. Now the Americans took a massive leap forward when they started the Apollo project, and this is the rocket that launched the very first Apollo space capsule. And it launched 3 Americans into orbit, and they used the Apollo spacecraft to take astronauts to the moon. But this rocket here at the base is called the Saturn I. This wasn't a moon rocket, it was just used to get space capsules into orbit. This last rocket is the mighty Saturn V that took the astronauts to the moon. It's a 3-stage rocket. Here is the first stage with the 5 massive F1 engines at the bottom. And then we have the second stage. Here we have the 5 J engines, I think they're referred to as. Another very big stage. And then the final stage, stage 3, has a single engine. And this is what actually propelled the rocket towards the moon. And at the top, there we have the service module in silver and the command module right at the top, which had the astronauts in it. And this is an old Airfix kit in 1/4/4 scale. So it's showing its age a little bit, but it still looks quite nice. This is the cabinet that the rockets are going to go into. I made this over 20 years ago, and you can see it's got lots of little things in, and I'll just do a quick rundown of what's actually inside it. So this cabinet contains a collection of space memorabilia that depicts the space race that took place between the Americans and the Russians in the 60s. Around the outside of the cabinet there's a collection of space stamps, and these portray the early Russian space missions, starting with Sputnik. Then they sent a dog into space, then a couple of dogs, and then they sent the first human, Yuri Gagarin, the first astronaut to fly into space. And these other stamps just commemorate some of the subsequent flights that the Russians made in the early stages of the space race. This one commemorates the first female astronaut, and here we have one commemorating the first spacewalk. Across the top we've got stamps that commemorate the early American space missions, starting with Project Mercury, Alan Shepard's flight, and then John Glenn, the first American to orbit the Earth. And then we have some of the other astronauts that flew in the Gemini program. And then here we see the Gemini capsule right up to the missions where they were attempting docking. And at the end here, we see the beginnings of the Apollo program, where they were testing out the Saturn V rocket. Coming down the right hand side, there you can see James Lovell, who flew on Apollo 8. And this stamp commemorates a famous photograph that was taken from Apollo 8 as it went round the back of the moon and came out and saw the Earth for the first time in its entirety. Some other Apollo missions here: Apollo 9, Apollo 10, which was a dress rehearsal for the moon landing, and then of course the big one, Apollo 11, with Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins flying to the moon in Apollo 11. More stamps commemorating that first moon landing. And then the Apollo program completed with some remaining missions, taking lunar rovers to the moon surface, spacewalks, and the final stamps here just commemorating some of the later missions. And the Apollo program ended with Apollo 17. There's a couple of first day covers. This one again commemorates the Apollo 11 moon landing, and you can see that it's been stamped in Southampton on the 21st of July 1969 to commemorate the first man on the moon. And here's another first day cover, again commemorating the moon landing, and you can see it's been stamped on July the 20th, 1969, as well as on September the 9th, 1969, and it has the first man on the moon commemorative stamp. And this is a very nice stamp, and this is one that commemorated the early Russian space missions. You can see there 4 of the early cosmonauts. This is stamped in 1962. There's a couple of mission badges. This one just is NASA. This one commemorates Apollo 11, and I got these badges from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Here's a book that I've just put back in. This is a New York Times publication which described the mission to get astronauts to the moon. These are little cigarette cards that again built up into little collections. These are part of a collection called Space Patrol, and they show some of the early American space missions. Here we have some chewing gum cards. You can see this one here, 7 cards for 6pence. That's an unopened packet, but here this shows what would have been inside it, and these were commemorative cards commemorating the Apollo 11 moon landing again. There's some other cool stuff in here. This is a collection of coins that were given out at Shell service stations in the UK. This is a full set. It commemorates the history of flight, some of the early historical events like the Wright brothers flight, but it goes all the way up to the Apollo 11 moon landing with Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins. This is an interesting piece of space memorabilia. It's actually a 7-inch single record with a narration of the moon landing. So that would be very interesting to listen to. Now this is a very exciting part of this cabinet, and this is a leaflet and menu from an event that I attended back in 1996. And this was a lunch and talk called Walking on the Moon by Alan Shepard. And this was held at the Carlton Hotel in Edinburgh. And there was a nice lunch, and then Alan Shepard gave a talk, and afterwards he was kind enough to sign everybody's programs. So this was signed in person by Alan Shepard, the first American astronaut in space. I've got another signed item here. This is a postcard showing photos of Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins, and you can see here in the top left hand corner this has actually been signed by Michael Collins, and this comes with a certificate of authenticity, so I know that it's real. Now there's a couple of things left to go in this space cabinet, and these are really the star attractions. The first one is this 1969 edition of the National Geographic magazine with a picture of Buzz Aldrin standing on the moon. And this has been signed by Buzz Aldrin himself. So the way that this was done, I owned this magazine and I sent it off to America to an autograph signing, and it was signed by Buzz Aldrin and sent back to me. And here is the certificate of authenticity to say that the article was signed in the presence of the company that ran the signing. And then lastly, the pièce de résistance. This here is a table card for a dinner that was held many years ago in America, and sitting at this dinner table was none other than Neil Armstrong, and that is Neil Armstrong's autograph, And this is a photograph that was taken of Neil Armstrong by the people who obtained the autograph. Now, I got this autograph many years ago, and I was pretty sure of its authenticity. It looked very genuine to me, but I've recently had the autograph officially authenticated by this guy called Steve Zarelli. He is a world authority on Neil Armstrong autographs, and he runs a company where he will certify whether or not, in his opinion, they are genuine. And he has examined this autograph, and in his opinion, this is a genuine Neil Armstrong autograph. So that means that the space cabinet has signed items from the 3 astronauts that made up the Apollo 11 crew. And that's actually quite a valuable thing to have. And if you add to that also Alan Shepard's autograph, the first American in space, as well as all the other memorabilia that's in the cabinet, it's actually quite a collection. So I'm going to put the rockets in, put these last few items in, and then that'll be the cabinet finished. Well, there it is. It's got all the rockets in, all lined up in order of size, and sitting in between all the other bits of memorabilia. Well, there we have it. That's another little restoration project. Like I said, I've had that cabinet for over 20 years. The models are now very old, and all the items within it. It's actually been in storage since we moved house 10 years ago. Didn't really have anywhere to put it, but now I've got it up on the wall in the modelling room, and that should keep it looking very nice into the future. So that's it from me today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing that come together. I'll say goodbye and see you next time on Modelling Misadventures.